At my ex's wedding, his new wife grabbed the microphone and declared, "I rescued him from that pathetic woman." The guests cheered. Suddenly, a server stepped forward, removed her cap, and announced, "I'm his daughter and I have something to reveal." The bride's face went pale. I never thought I'd find myself at my ex-husband's wedding, hiding in the back row behind a massive floral arrangement. Yet, there I was, Emily Carson, wearing my only decent dress navy blue, nothing flashy, clutching my purse like it might shield me from the whispers and sidelong glances. 5 years. That's how long it had been since Jason left me for Vanessa, the marketing director at his firm with perfect hair and a laugh that somehow always sounded rehearsed. "Mom, you don't have to go," Olivia had told me last week, sitting at our kitchen table, pushing around the remnants of a microwave dinner. But I caught something in her eye, some mixture of hope and something else I couldn't quite place. My daughter, now 19 and in her second year at Chicago Community College, had grown into a young woman with her father's stubborn chin and my inability to hide emotions. "I'm fine staying home with Ben and Jerry," I'd replied, referring to my preferred method of dealing with difficult situations: premium ice cream and bad reality TV. But Olivia had been insistent in that quiet way of hers. "Dad would appreciate it," she'd said, though we both knew that probably wasn't true. "Plus, it shows you've moved on." I hadn't moved on, not really, but I wanted my daughter to think I had. So I agreed, not knowing then that Olivia had plans of her own plans that didn't involve just sitting quietly through her father's second wedding. The Grand Palmer Hotel in downtown Chicago was exactly the kind of place Vanessa would choose: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, staff in pristine uniforms. I parked my 10-year-old Honda between sleek BMWs and Mercedes, feeling like the before picture in someone else's makeover story. As I walked through those imposing doors, my heart hammering against my ribs, I had no idea that this wedding wouldn't end with just rice being thrown and champagne toasts. No, this particular Saturday in May was about to become legendary in the Brooks family history. And somehow, against all odds, I'd have a front row seat to the whole spectacular disaster. Jason and I met during freshman orientation at Northwestern. He was studying business while I pursued education, both of us, wide-eyed kids from different suburbs who bonded over our mutual hatred of the dining hall's mystery meat Mondays. Our first date wasn't anything special, just coffee at this tiny place off campus where the barista always drew weird faces in the foam. But I remember how Jason kept making me laugh so hard that coffee almost came out my nose, and how he didn't even flinch when I accidentally knocked over his mug. Back then, his ambition was endearing, not the obsession it later became. We married right after graduation, moved into a tiny apartment in Evanston, where the heat only worked when it felt like it, and spent our first Christmas eating Chinese takeout on a blanket because we couldn't afford furniture. Those were good, years, simple but good. When Olivia came along 2 years later, Jason painted her nursery himself, 3 different shades of yellow because he kept getting the color not quite right. I found him asleep on the floor, surrounded by paint cans, and that image, him curled up with a brush still in his hand, that was the Jason I fell in love with. Things changed after he joined Stuart Palmer Marketing. Suddenly, it was late nights, weekend conferences, and endless talk about networking opportunities. We drifted in that way, couples do gradually, then all at once. The final blow came during Olivia's 16th birthday. Jason missed it entirely, stuck in Cincinnati with his team, including his ambitious new project partner, Vanessa Winters. 3 months later, he told me he wasn't happy anymore and moved out. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but we all knew the difference had a name and designer wardrobe. Olivia took it hard, though she tried not to show it. She'd come home from weekend visits to Jason's new downtown condo with stories about Vanessa's health smoothies and how they'd gone shopping at stores where I couldn't afford to even look at the mannequins. "Dad says Vanessa's helping him become his best self," she told me once, her voice flat as she picked at her dinner. I didn't respond. What could I say? That his best self apparently didn't include the woman who'd supported him through entry-level jobs and startup attempts, or the daughter who had his eyes, and my stubbornness? The engagement announcement came just 8 months after our divorce was final. I see a glossy photo in the local paper showing them beaming on a beach in Maui. Olivia went quiet for days afterward. When their save-the-date arrived addressed to both of us, probably Vanessa's idea of being inclusive, Olivia pinned it to our fridge without comment. I caught her staring at it sometimes, her expression unreadable. Looking back, I should have realized then that my daughter was planning something. She's always been quiet, but the quiet ones are usually thinking the most. The Grand Palmer Hotel didn't just host weddings, it created matrimonial experiences, according to the brochure I'd found in Olivia's backpack. The ballroom where Jason and Vanessa decided to tie the knot cost more for one day than my first car. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings that soared 2 stories high, and white orchids flown in from Hawaii, I later learned adorned every table. This wasn't just a wedding, this was a statement, each detail screaming, "Look how far Jason Brooks has come from that little apartment in Evanston." I slipped into the ceremony hall 17 minutes late on purpose, choosing a seat in the last row behind a particularly enthusiastic floral arrangement. From this strategic position, I could see without being seen, especially by Carol Brooks, Jason's mother, who had already forgotten my name at family gatherings while Jason and I were still married. The Brooks family occupied the front rows like royalty, all pearls and navy blazers. Carol dabbed at non-existent tears with a monogrammed handkerchief, while Richard, Jason's father, checked his watch repeatedly, as if he had a golf tee time to make afterward. "You're doing great," whispered Sarah Lambert, my closest friend since college, who had insisted on coming as my emotional support person. She squeezed my hand as the string quartet launched into their 3rd Brandenburg Concerto. "Just breathe. And remember, we have a reservation at Gino's after this, where you can eat your weight in deep dish and tell me what a jerk everyone is." I scanned the room for Olivia but couldn't spot her anywhere. She had texted earlier saying she'd meet me at the ceremony, but her seat remained empty. What I didn't know then was that Olivia had applied for a serving job at the hotel 3 weeks earlier, specifically to work this wedding. The black uniform and pulled-back hair had made her practically invisible to the guests, just another person carrying trays of champagne and canapés that cost more than our weekly grocery budget. When Vanessa appeared at the entrance in a gown that probably cost as much as a semester at Northwestern, the collective gasps were audible. She was stunning, all sleek lines and perfect posture, her dark hair swept up to reveal diamond earrings that caught the light with every practiced move. Standing next to the officiant, Jason looked like he'd won some kind of life lottery, his smile wider than I'd seen in the last years of our marriage. I felt a strange pang, not jealousy exactly, but something sharper, the realization that he had never smiled at me that way, not even on our wedding day with its rented tuxedo and my mother's altered dress. As they exchanged vows about journeys and soulmates and forever after, I noticed the whispers and sidelong glances from guests who recognized me. "That's the ex," they murmured behind wedding programs, their expressions a mixture of pity and curiosity. I sat straighter, chin up, Sarah's hand firmly in mine. I hadn't come to make a scene or shed bitter tears. I'd come because sometimes witnessing an ending is the only way to truly begin again. Little did I know that the real spectacle hadn't even started yet. The reception kicked off in typical fashion. The wedding party entered to some pop song I didn't recognize, twirling and high-fiving like they were in a reality show finale. Jason and Vanessa made their grand entrance last, her dress somehow now convertible to a reception-friendly version that still probably cost more than my car. They danced to John Legend while guests held up their phones, capturing the perfect moment for social media. I nursed my 1 glass of champagne in the corner, making it last, calculating how soon I could leave without seeming rude, though why I cared about appearing rude to people who clearly didn't care about my feelings remained a mystery even to me. "And now," announced the DJ, a guy with too much hair gel and enthusiasm, "the best man would like to say a few words. Michael Brooks." Jason's younger brother, who once drunk texted me that he always thought I was too good for Jason anyway, approached the microphone. His speech was surprisingly heartfelt, reminiscing about childhood adventures, Jason's determination, how he'd finally found his perfect match. I wondered if Michael remembered sending that text, or if he even recognized me sitting in the shadows near the service entrance. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As polite applause followed Michael's toast, Vanessa suddenly stood up, smoothing her dress with manicured hands. "I'd like to say something too," she announced, taking the microphone with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. The room quieted immediately. "Many of you know Jason and I met at work," she began, her voice carrying that carefully cultivated warmth that never quite reached her eyes. "What you might not know is that when we met, Jason was lost." A strange feeling crawled up my spine as she continued. He was in a relationship that was holding him back, stuck in patterns that were keeping him from his true potential. Faces turned toward me, not even trying to be subtle now. Sarah gripped my arm so tightly it would later leave marks. "I want to thank all of you who supported our relationship from the beginning, who saw what I saw, a man who needed rescuing from that pathetic woman who couldn't appreciate what she had." The gasps were audible, quickly covered by uncomfortable laughter, and then most painfully actual applause from many guests. Jason looked momentarily uncomfortable, but then smiled weakly, raising his glass as if toasting her brutal honesty. His parents nodded approvingly. I sat frozen, my face burning, years of therapy and self-affirmations about my worth dissolving in seconds. Sarah whispered furiously, "Let's go, Em. Right now." But something kept me glued to my seat, maybe pride, maybe shock, or maybe just the bizarre feeling that this wedding had suddenly veered into territory no one had anticipated. "To new beginnings," Vanessa concluded with a triumphant smile, "and to finally getting the life and family Jason deserves." More applause, more glasses raised. I noticed a server near the head table freeze mid-motion, her hands tightening around the water pitcher she carried. Even from a distance, I recognized the set of those shoulders, the particular way she held her head when angry. Olivia. My daughter was watching her father smile indulgently at the woman who had just publicly humiliated her mother, and something in her expression told me this script was about to go severely off-book. The moment hung suspended in the ballroom air, Vanessa basking in applause, Jason looking uncomfortably pleased, guests either enthusiastically clapping or examining their champagne flutes with sudden intense interest. I caught sight of Olivia, still holding that water pitcher, her knuckles white against the silver handle. Our eyes met across the room, and I gave a small shake of my head. "Don't do anything. Not here. Not now." But there's something about 19-year-olds. They have this remarkable ability to see exactly the right thing to do and exactly zero reasons not to do it immediately. Olivia set down the pitcher with deliberate care. She straightened her server's vest, removed her cap, and let her hair Jason's color but my wave fall around her shoulders. Then she walked directly to the DJ booth, whispered something that made him step back in surprise, and took the microphone from its stand. The feedback squeal cut through the celebratory murmurs like a knife. "Hello, everyone." Her voice was steady, clearer than I'd ever heard it. "Most of you don't know me. I'm Olivia Brooks, Jason's daughter." The silence that descended was absolute. 300 people collectively held their breath. Jason's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips, and Vanessa's perfect smile collapsed like a soufflé in a slammed oven. "I wasn't invited to this wedding," Olivia continued, her gaze sweeping the stunned faces. "So I got a job serving water and collecting dirty plates to be here. I wanted to see my dad get married. I wanted to be happy for him." She paused, and in that moment, she looked so much like the little girl who used to practice her school presentations in front of our bathroom mirror that my heart physically ached. But then I heard what Vanessa just said about my mom. Vanessa's face had transitioned from flushed triumph to ghostly white in seconds. She reached for Jason's arm, but he was staring at Olivia like she'd materialized from another dimension. From my corner, I could see Carol Brooks frantically signaling to the wedding planner, who looked like she was witnessing her career implode in real time. "What you all don't know," Olivia continued, her voice gaining strength, is what I discovered while working at Stuart Palmer these past few months. I've been interning in the admin department, which means I handle a lot of paperwork, including expense reports and hotel reservations. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. 2 weeks ago, I was organizing files when I found these. She held up the screen, though no one but those at the head table could see what was displayed. Text messages between Vanessa and Robert Garrett, her boss, the same boss who approved her promotion last month. Gasps rippled through the room. Jason turned slowly to face Vanessa, whose complexion now matched her white gown. And here, Olivia swiped to another screen, are the receipts from the Palmer Suitesius, this very hotel where they've been meeting every Thursday afternoon for the past 7 months. Including, she paused for effect, a skill I didn't know my daughter possessed, last Thursday, 2 days ago. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. People stood for a better view, and someone, I think it was Rebecca, Vanessa's sister, knocked over an entire centerpiece trying to reach the head table. Through it all, Olivia stood calmly, still holding the microphone, looking directly at her father, whose world was visibly crumbling with each passing second. "So, while you're celebrating my dad being rescued," she said, her voice dropping to a quieter register that somehow cut through the chaos, "maybe ask yourself, who really needs rescuing now?" She placed the microphone carefully on the nearest table, smoothed her server's uniform, and walked unhurried, head high directly toward me. Behind her, Vanessa had collapsed into her seat, mascara tracking down her perfect makeup as she alternated between denial and sobbing accusations about privacy violations. Chaos erupted like someone had kicked a hornet's nest in formal wear. Vanessa's father, a stocky man whose face had progressed through several shades of purple during Olivia's speech, lunged toward the head table. "This is slander," he bellowed, though his legal terminology needed work. Elizabeth Winters grabbed her daughter's shoulders, creating a protective barrier between Vanessa and the storm of whispers, camera phones, and shocked expressions. Jason just sat there, tie askew, looking like someone had hit him with a 2x4. "Let's go," Olivia whispered, reaching my table. Sarah was already grabbing my purse, hustling us toward the exit as wedding guests parted like the Red Sea, staring openly now. Behind us, I heard Vanessa's voice rise to a pitch that probably shattered stemware. "They're just texts, business meetings. You're choosing to believe your bitter ex's manipulations?" Her voice cracked on the last word. "Bobby is married with 3 kids. His wife might find that reservation for the honeymoon suite interesting," Olivia muttered under her breath as we pushed through the ballroom doors. A small, savage part of Methapart that had cried in grocery store parking lots and screamed into pillows felt a flash of fierce pride at my daughter's calculated revenge. The more rational part was already calculating therapy costs and wondering if there was a greeting card category for "Sorry, my daughter nuked your wedding." We made it to the lobby when a hand caught my elbow. Jason, flushed and disheveled, his boutonniere hanging by a thread. "Did you put her up to this?" he demanded, voice low and dangerous. For a moment, he looked like the stranger he'd become in those final months of our marriage, cold, accusatory, eager to make me the villain in his story. "Are you serious right now?" Olivia stepped between us, 5'4" of pure protective fury. "Mom didn't know anything. I did this because it needed doing. Because someone needed to tell the truth in that room full of fake smiles and $50 steaks." Jason deflated like someone had unplugged him. He ran a hand through his carefully styled hair, destroying the effect he'd probably spent an hour achieving. "Liv, honey, you don't understand adult relationships." "Don't," Olivia's voice could have frozen fire. "Don't you dare condescend to me right now. I've watched Mom rebuild her life piece by piece while you played house with a woman who's been cheating on you since before you put that ring on her finger." She pulled out her phone again. "Want to see the hotel receipts from back when you were still planning the engagement party? I've got those too." A wedding planner appeared at Jason's side, whispering urgently about damage control. Through the ballroom's open doors, I could see Diana Chen, clipboard clutched to her chest like armor, directing staff to clear a side exit for the bride. Guests huddled in confused clumps, some leaving hurriedly, others lingering like spectators at a particularly entertaining car crash. We should go, Sarah said firmly, sliding her arm through mine. This isn't our circus anymore. The drive home was quiet at first. Olivia stared out the passenger window as Chicago's skyline receded behind us. The late afternoon sun glinting off glass towers that seemed suddenly unreal. Like movie props, instead of actual buildings where people live their complicated lives. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, she finally said, still looking out the window. But I'm not sorry I did it. I reached across the console and took her hand, the same hand that had once been so tiny it could barely wrap around my finger. You didn't embarrass me, I told her, surprised to find it was true. But honey, why? Why put yourself through that? She turned to me then, eyes damp but fierce. Because you wouldn't. Because you've spent 5 years taking the high road, and where did it get you? Sometimes the high road just means people don't see you at all. We picked up pizza on the way home, not deep dish from Gino's as planned, but from the little place near our house that knows us by name and always throws in extra garlic knots. We ate straight from the box at our kitchen table, still in our wedding clothes, talking until midnight about truth and lies and the complicated terrain in between. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my porch swing watching fall leaves scatter across the yard. The annulment went through faster than anyone expected, apparently. Vanessa's father knew people who wanted this whole mess wrapped up quietly. I heard through mutual friends that she moved to Seattle, taking a VP position at a tech firm where, presumably, the executives don't have teenage daughters with detective skills and a vendetta. Jason calls more now, not me, but Olivia. Weekly dinners have become their thing. Awkward at first, but settling into something that resembles healing. Last week, she told me he'd finally asked about that day. Really asked. Not just the surface questions, but the deeper ones about why and how long she'd known. He actually listened, she said, surprise coloring her voice. Like, really listened without getting defensive. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. As for me, I started dating again, nothing serious. Just coffee with a chemistry teacher Sarah knows, dinner with the dad of one of my students. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that got lost somewhere between I do and irreconcilable differences. Last month, I painted my living room a bright yellow that Carol Brooks would hate, the same yellow Jason never got quite right for Olivia's nursery. It's not about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming pieces of it on my own terms. Sometimes I think about Vanessa's speech that day about rescuing Jason, about the life he deserved. The funny thing about karma is that it rarely arrives in ways you'd expect. I never wished for public humiliation or spectacular revenge, but watching my daughter stand up not just for me but for truth itself, there's a peculiar justice there that no court could provide. The wedding invitation still sits in my keepsake box, not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I gained that day. The knowledge that sometimes the most important moments of our lives happen when we're busy making other plans, usually wearing uncomfortable shoes and trying not to cry in public. And the realization that my daughter, this amazing young woman who came from both of us but is entirely her own person, has a moral compass that points true north even when everyone around her is lost. That's a legacy worth more than any wedding, no matter how many crystal chandeliers hang overhead.